Hey, it's Terry Miller with the Des Moines User Group. In our user group meeting today, we hosted Matt Mountains, who gave us a great presentation on some of the key features of the Financial Services Cloud. We also had my friend Svatka Simpson from Appirio, who helped us gain an understanding of the things we need to be thinking about when it comes to data privacy and security in our orgs. So take a listen to these two fantastic presentations.
Nice to meet everybody. I'm based in Cincinnati, been working in Salesforce for 14 years and been working in the financial services industry for almost that long. And so I had a company by the name of NextGen, and we were acquired by Sikich, based out of Naperville a year and a half ago. So what we're going to show today is the Financial Services Cloud, and I'm going to share my screen right now. And let me know if you can see it here.
We can see it.
You can see it.
Great. So just to level set, FSC came out about 4 years ago. The initial focus was a data model just for wealth management, RIAs. And they've since expanded it to include banking, to include insurance carriers with captive agents. Okay. And so what that means is an insurance carrier where their agents are their employees. Most carriers use independent. So to me, this has a interesting fit within the whole insurance world. There's a site that shows the data model and everything that's been built as it relates to each, banking, wealth, insurance, and they're talking about expanding it into other areas too. But for purposes of today, I'm going to walk you through just a very high level data model as to how this works and how it's different than Sales Cloud. So, and feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions. So, sound good? And Terry, just for time standpoint, I've got till 11. 35?
35, 30, yeah, perfect. Somewhere, anywhere in there is fine.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here with the accounts. And what it does is this is built, the ideal model is the person account. It originally, when it started, it was the individual account, and then it's been changed back to the person account. So I'm not going to go through what record types are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a household here for Bart and Marge Simpson. And I do this, I demo this all the time. So that's why I just figured I'd pick on Bart and Marge, okay? So what this has is, this is a household. And so the household and the individuals are on the account tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here with the relationships. And this is where FSC starts to very much differ from traditional Sales Cloud, where Sales Cloud has accounts and contacts. In the Financial Services Cloud, the individual is at the center of the universe. So I'm going to click on Bart here, and let's look at Bart's record. And what you're going to see is Bart's now at the center of the universe. So we can see that Bart's associated to a household. Bart is also associated to a couple accounts. Bart's an employee here and is on the board here. And Bart has some related contacts. So with Financial Services Cloud, you've got reciprocal roles, and I included the tab here. So if I'm your attorney, you're my client, okay? And so it gives you the ability to go in and to make those associations so that you can then very easily look at Fred Lawyer and see how many people in the system work with Fred Lawyer, okay? So that's one of the major differences. Now, this is the old relationship model. They just came out with a new one called Actionable Relationship Center, which instead of going vertically down and stopping here, it allows you to go horizontally and keep drilling into it. So I could click on United Way of Springfield and then be able to see information about them from this screen. So it's a much more drill down model, if you will. So that's one of the first differences. Now, within also that's important is because this householding model can be used in a lot of, it's primarily B2C, of course, but let's go in and edit the model, because this is where, when we were deploying the wealth management template previously and other things, we struggled, is because if you want to add grandma to this household, that's great. Grandma's also part of another household, but you only want her assets to roll up to one household. Well, previously you couldn't do that. So what you can do now here is you pick who's in the group and what's their role. So Marge is the spouse and a member. Maggie is a spouse, as I said. Come on, scroll up. Oh, why is it doing that? Let's try it. No. Okay, well, you got to trust me on that one. But Maggie is a dependent and a member. But then you also pick here, what do you want to roll up? So in this case, I want all Marge's financial accounts and assets and liabilities and all that to roll up. Okay. This is where if you had grandma, you may say, I don't want anything to roll up. And then you just select who's the primary member and is this their primary group. So you've got a lot more flexibility around what can roll up to the household and what doesn't. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's go back here to Bart. One of the other things that the Financial Services Cloud has is what's called life events. And this is pretty cool. I like it, but it takes up a lot of space. I wish you could shrink it down, and we just haven't figured out how to do that yet. I don't think it's possible. But the idea here is that as you enter dates onto the person account, we just wrote some code just to be able to automatically populate these, or you can do them manually. But it's a pretty neat graphic. We don't see a ton of people using it yet, but I think as it becomes more functional, then it'll make sense to for a lot more people to use it. Okay. Let me go back to the household. And so we've talked about the relationships and the relationship map. Now let's talk about the financials. So what this is, for lack of a better word, is these are not related lists, but they kind of act like one, if you will. So as you're plugging in Financial Services Cloud to the bank, to your broker-dealer custodian, they've ideally built data models or integrations in order to meet this data model. So this right now, all we're displaying here is investment accounts, insurance policies, and bank accounts. But you can, there's about 20 different ones that you can have here. So there's assets and liabilities. There could be, you might want to break out in investment accounts separate. You may want to have, oh gosh, what's it called? Like where you can track how much gold they own, or just other types of investments. So I've seen this, be 5 or 6 deep, different sections. But I've seen it very small too. But you can have it really as many as you want, but you want to be, limit that. Now, as you go in here, what you've got the ability to do is, what we've got is 4 investment accounts here. So what, 2 IRAs, 401k, and a brokerage. So you're assuming that I, the advisor, am managing all of that for Bart and Marge. Maybe not. So you've got the ability in here, and this is what's really cool, is to say, am I managing it or not? Is it held away? Held away means somebody else is managing it. So one of the things that this has, when you look at Bart and Marge, and the financials is you can calculate what's my wallet share. So I may show here that they've got, $4 million, but my wallet share of what I'm managing for them is only $2 million. So my wallet share is 50%. Okay. So that was something that in the past, just in the previous versions, just was not easy to do. So that's kind of where you've got a lot more flexibility around tracking what you're managing, what's not being managed, so that if you're not managing it, it's a great opportunity for you to potentially bring them over. We also have financial goals here, and there's not much to this. In this case, Marge wants to retire, and we have a date for Marge, and target value is 4 million, and the actual is 3.5. Well, that's great, and this is good for when the advisor goes out to see the client every year. But key thing to note here is this data has to be manually updated. This 3.5. It's not going to pull from the financials, because you may want a boat that costs 30 grand and you've got 3 million, a million in financials, but it's tied up in an IRA. So you need to have a separate goal for that boat. And I've got 20,000 saved for it now. So that's why these are manually updated. They don't refer back to the financials. What we built, but we've stopped, is something called meeting notes. And this is something that's been very common. We've heard it over and over and over. And Salesforce, with the spring release coming out here in a month or whenever, is going to have this, is a separate object for meeting notes. So activities are used for phone calls, emails, and all that. But once a year, every 6 months, when I, the advisor, sit down with my client, those are bigger meetings. I got to prepare for them. I got to put together documents, and there's typically a lot of follow-ups after that. And I don't want to get my notes and my follow-ups and my prep all in this junk over here. I want it separate. Now, I may have my tasks over here to prepare for it, but I want to be able to track my meeting notes separately. So that's where, when you think about it, you're going to want to track information potentially as it relates to, let me pull up just a sample here, for their investment management. So I'm investing their money, for their tax, for their estate, for their retirement. Because what's happening is that advisors traditionally have focused just on investment management. I got $2 million and I'm investing it for you. But now, based upon, new regulations, they really need to be focused on these other three parts, the tax, the estate, and retirement planning. So we're waiting just to see what Salesforce is coming out with on the meeting side. But that is something that is going to be a new object in Financial Services Cloud here in a month. Okay, so that is, from a high level standpoint, Financial Services Cloud and some of the nuances about it. From a relationships tab, from the financials, from the financial goals, meeting notes are going to be new. Any questions so far? Okay.
Hey, Matt, real quick. I know people are very impressed by seeing all this over here where I work. And I know that they're going to ask me what the availability is on basically reporting this, these groupings and roll-ups out to either paper document or, printing to PDF or something that they can show other people.
So you mean like prior to a meeting, having being able to auto create the tear sheet, for lack of a better word, for the client?
Yes.
Yeah. We haven't. It's not available. It's coming. I don't know when. I'm on the Financial Services Cloud Partner Advisory Board, so I know it's coming. it's not coming soon enough. And what it includes, based on talking to past clients, everybody wants something different. So that may be the part of the problem, though, is when you have a financial account in here, you've got the high level information about it, but unless you're bringing in, the performance data and other data from your custodian, is that report really going to meet your needs? So you may have to go to, like, for example, the broker may have to go to like a TD or a Schwab or an LPL and be able to print those reports out. So that's kind of where it gets a little fuzzy as to exactly what do they want on that tear sheet.
Sure. No, I appreciate the answer. I wanted to be prepared for when those come up, since we haven't gone live yet with it.
Yep. And then one other thing that has been very common, and actually Salesforce is starting to build this out, is leveraging cases for the standard processes that, in this case, wealth advisors do. Everybody does these 7, okay? Onboarding, change of address, offboarding, client passes away, money movement. So, somebody calls in and says, I need 20 grand for a new boat. So you want to log in the system, but then I need somebody to make sure we got 20 grand. What account is it coming from? Can we do it without taxes? Blah, blah, blah. So there's some process there. New financial account, because you may onboard somebody and they may have 3 financial accounts. So you want to track each one separate to make sure you're getting it all done. And then operations request is just a catch-all. So this typically, operations request does not have a process associated to it. It's kind of like, I need something done, but the other 6 do. Now, we've got 7 in here, build out, but some clients only start with onboarding, so it's totally flexible, but that's something where cases are used a lot with FSC. So now the Financial Services Cloud also comes with action plans. If you've worked with action plans in the past, I loved it. And so action plans have been in Financial Services Cloud for probably a couple of years. With this next release, in my opinion, it's going to be caught up to the action plans you've used in the past, because now we'll be able to do dependent tasks. So I won't launch the second task till I complete the first one, because today that's not available in action plans in Financial Services Cloud. Okay. One of the other things that the FSC does is it comes with pre-built dashboards. So we recreated these, but it comes with my book of business sales and opportunities, my book of business overview, my book of business engagement opportunities. So I'll just click on one, and these are all the pre-built reports. I haven't refreshed it in 77 days. I don't have a ton of data in here, but it does come with 3 pre-built, which is really, really nice, because clients and what they, sometimes they're not sure as to what they want. So you show them this, and then they'll be able to better articulate how well this meets their needs. So, but yeah, so overall dashboards and reports been really impressed with, that it's pre-built and they've got them around the use cases that most people need. Not all, but it's a good start is the point. So, and then one last thing, and this has been a problem. One of the limitations I see of Financial Services Cloud is when you're working with consumers and you get a lead for John Smith, you may be talking to Mary Smith also, John's wife, and a lead can only have one person. So what we did was we just changed it so that you can have 2 people on a lead, and when you convert it, you create the household and the 2 members. So that's one of the things that is still troublesome in terms of FSC, and I'm hoping that they build out some functionality for it, because it can be a challenge when you're trying to convert a John Smith lead and a Mary Smith lead and combine them, and it's a lot of steps. So that's just something I'm hoping that they're going to be addressing soon.
I
So
hope they address that across the entire system
yeah,
for all of them.
that would be
That is such a
really
hassle.
nice. Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question if you're open for questions.
sure.
So we were talking about the cases and the record types with processes. They come with processes. How are those? Are those flow based or what? How? When you say process, I guess what do you mean?
Oh yeah. So what I was trying to show was that's it doesn't come with those. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I misrepresented. But what we see within FSC for those processes, because that ties into action plans.
Okay.
Because Salesforce is really pushing action plans with Financial Services Cloud.
Yep.
But a lot of times they don't meet the need. Now they may now with dependent tasks. So the alternative would be to use cases. So I'm sorry if I misled you there.
Oh, that's okay. I worked a lot with that in my old job. A lot of processes, but I worked for a partner that's what their whole, they were selling a platform for that process. So for all those processes. So I was like, oh, did they recreate that inside of Salesforce? But it doesn't sound like it. Okay. That's why I was curious on.
Yeah. So yep.
Is it safe, Matt, to assume that when you're implementing financial services that you're doing a lot of integrations with back-end solutions to bring that data all in? Is that just kind of a given, or what do you see?
Not necessarily, because some organizations, hold their clients' money at Schwab and TD and Fidelity and LPL and this and that and this and that, and they want all those integrations. And it's like, well, are you aggregating that through any tool set? And
right.
They typically are. And then we say, okay, if we plug that in, that integration into from that aggregator into Salesforce, that'll bring everything in. They go, yeah. We go, okay, good. And so those aggregators typically have integrations. Some of the custodians do, some don't. So
yeah, it would be probably a really good use case for blockchain, assuming that all the parties, accept.
Okay. Yeah. So, but typically those are pre-built integrations that you plug it in from the App Exchange and tweak it, and you have it working. So.
Mm-hmm. And Matt, when you're talking about aggregators, are you talking about like Money Guide Pro, eMoney, those types of things?
Yeah, well, like an Orion.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, Orion.
Yeah. eMoney and Money Guide Pro. eMoney was building it, and then they gave up at the end. And Money Guide Pro, there may be a workaround there, but it's frustrating that eMoney and Money Guide Pro don't have an easy way to plug it in.
I didn't think so. That's why I was curious. It's been a few years since I worked in that arena. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. So, but whether it's Orion or a Tamarack, those are two common ones that we're plugging in.
Yeah, I did a lot with the TD ones too. TD had a huge integration with Salesforce for their advisors. So
yeah, TD and LPL have traditionally had their own
partnership.
Yeah, their own partnerships. So you would buy Salesforce from them, but neither of them are on FSC at this time. They're still on the legacy Sales Cloud.
Yeah. Yep.
How many of it on the call are using FSC? Have that in your org? Maybe use your reaction and button there on the toolbar. Anybody have FSC live? I see a couple of you.
We're moving to that this year.
Amanda, you're using it. Okay. How do you like it, Amanda? What's your thoughts on it?
So we have used it for about 3 years. I feel like we adopted it fairly early and had to do a big shift to person accounts, which we did last year. So I feel like there are some things that maybe they released, in a very agile format, and we've had to just keep updating with them. And so there are some things that we've held off on implementing. Action plans, we actually looked at it when it first came out and helped beta test it. And we didn't release it to our users until a couple of months ago because we knew it wasn't quite ready for them yet.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Any other questions for Matt while you've got an expert's ear right here?
I really like the live events sort of section, but it's really interesting to hear that, it's a newer feature. So that's actually really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's been out for, I think, a while. Just nobody puts it on the page is what we've seen. So,
and that's customizable, right? You can make those live events what you need them to be.
Yes, you can create. Yeah, you can add new ones. So I could even come in here and say, presented at user group, right? So you can create your own. Yes,
that's a live event right there.
It is.
Oh, I'm so honored. I don't know what to do. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
I have a question for you. So a lot of what you've shown is from a client distribution partner perspective, but what about managing relationships with the financial professional? So financial institution managing a relationship with the advisor.
So for like an independent distribution model?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's probably sales.
Like, is there appointment license automation? What kind of stuff? Anything?
Well, yeah. So if you've got an independent distribution model and that's your focus is to grow that distribution model, FSC is probably not a fit because the concept of householding doesn't make sense. You want to be able to see the policies or the financial accounts that independent advisor has, but that could just be a related list in Sales Cloud. So, I know Salesforce tries to sell FSC with everything, but there's not like in the private equity world. I mean, they're dealing with businesses and referral sources. Well, that doesn't really fit FSC because you're not using the householding model and everything associated to it. So, I
would say too that we're kind of in that same boat. I don't know who asked the question. W088098.
I'm Amanda too. I'm Amanda. Sorry.
Amanda. I'm kind of in that same boat, Amanda. We're going to be implementing FSC this year, and we're a carrier. Annuity carrier. So we're going to kind of tackle it as we have our agent distribution force. They're independent, but we have our policyholders that are really going to be fitting into that FSC model. So we're going to have householding with our policyholders. So we always say at our company, we have two customers. So we have our agent force is our customer base and our policyholders are our customer base. So we're just starting out with the whole implementation and we haven't really had these conversations, but in my mind, I feel like our accounts and contacts that we currently have with Sales Cloud, Service Cloud are going to kind of stick how they are. So we have like national marketing organizations are our accounts, or our broker dealers are our accounts, and we have contacts are the agents that roll up to those accounts. We'll have those, but then I think the FSC model is really going to fit into the householding of our policyholders, so we can have this type of functionality for a lot of our policyholders. I think we're going to try to mash it all up together. I hope it works out, but that's how I'm envisioning it in my mind.
Yeah, I think you have a really good point there. We have two different clients based on who you're working with.
Yep.
You have your advisors who are clients and expect an experience, right? And you have clients that are purchasing business that expect a different experience.
Yep.
So yeah, that's really good insight. Thank you.
Yeah. And I can talk more later this year after we do our implementation. Hopefully it works out as I have it in my head, but that's kind of that's the road that we're about to embark on. So.
And I will say I put something in the chat. This is Amanda Ware. So I haven't really looked much in our spring sandbox yet, but a financial services cloud for their kind of banking type branch of financial services is introducing some new objects like branch unit business member. And so I'm wondering if those could potentially be of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. One more question? And if not, we will say thank you to Matt. That was awesome. I hope that everybody appreciated seeing something a little bit new. I love the way that the household and relationship model is done in this. I wish that was something that was a part of the regular Sales Cloud. That's just really cool the way they do the visual and make it so clean.
Yeah, I agree, Terry. I feel like it's very beneficial for that customer 360, right?
Yeah.
That Salesforce always touts. I don't feel like that householding is just for FSC. I totally agree.
Exactly.
It definitely could be useful in Sales Cloud too, but
yeah, I've tried really hard on that same thing. I just like how that map is pictured when you look at, I mean, we use person accounts too, and we struggle with that of I can own a couple businesses and be related, or you have your related contacts where you have to look through related accounts. I wish that we could get that map functionality to draw it out. It's really clean.
Yeah, I thought about you guys, Patrick, with the financial services, and thought that would be a really cool feature for you guys.
Yeah, there's some stuff in financial services that makes a lot of sense in our business, and there's others that don't. So it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
Same with us. We're still going to go forward, but same with us.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. That was really good. I greatly appreciate you stepping in and doing that. For those of you who don't know, I just put a request out there on the community, and Matt volunteered to step in. So greatly appreciate you doing that. If there's a way we can repay the kindness, certainly let us know. We'd be happy to do that. But thank you again. It was fantastic.
Good.
I appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, and I'm going to sign off.
Thank you very much. All right. Very good. Thanks.
Goodbye.
If you're interested in visiting more with Matt, you can find him on LinkedIn. I did have a Twitter address. I think it's mmountain is his Twitter handle. So if you're curious in connecting more with him. So I would like to switch gears and introduce my friend Svatka to you. Svatka and I are study group partners. For those of you who've been in a study group with me on the admin or the platform app builder, the ones that Carla and I do together, Svatka and I have been in those same types of groups for the certified technical architect study groups that are out there. So that's how we know each other. We go back, about 2 or 3 years, maybe, I would say, and have stayed in touch with each other over that time period. And Svatka has a presentation for us on data privacy. I thought that kind of fit alongside with some of the financial services items that we deal with here a lot in Des Moines. So welcome, Svatka, and I'll let you kind of take it from there.
And so is my presentation on? Can you see it?
Very good.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Terry. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys, not only because it's kind of my jam. We all have something, but so that's really something that I appreciate. I am a Philadelphia Developer User Group co-leader. So I co-run the group in Philadelphia with Patrick. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I work at Appirio. Have been working with the 2000s. So that's definitely, been quite the journey. I have seen person accounts that were in early beginnings. Then everybody paused with person accounts. And now we are seeing them coming. Financial services, health cloud, you name it, right? So all of the industry clouds are ready to go and tackle it one more time. Should be really interesting to see. My close connections to Des Moines area is I used to actually work in Ames, Iowa. So I would come on that little puddle jumper from Chicago. And there were times where I would be looking out of the window saying, you're still too far up. Little cursor. So that was definitely some of the scary plane rides that sometimes you would take. Favorite restaurants near Ames is called Open Flame. I don't know if any of you actually ever visited Open Flame, but the waiter comes up, asks you what kind of cut you want. You pick one, they show you the fridge, and they show you the big stove in the middle. It's literally like a whole grill in the middle, and you just go get that fork and put that meat on the grill. So if you guys ever are looking for a different experience, just Google Open Flame near Ames, Iowa.
Right. Anybody been there?
Yeah.
I would say, Patrick, of course you have your Iowa State person. Awesome.
Yeah, it's yeah, I would be really interested to hear what you guys, how you enjoyed that restaurant, because I thought it was very unique. Okay, let's get moving. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about trending here, and just not to do like just the usual Salesforce presentation, but really thinking about what's happening in a world about data, especially when we're talking about financial services or health cloud, right? So there are a couple different trends that we are seeing out there, and maybe the question comes in: why are all these countries out there coming up with their own laws, and what are they trying to protect? Right? Why are they putting consumer in a driver's seat to say, choose the company you want to do business with because of X? Maybe it's the customer experience, maybe it's the product, or maybe it is the trust that oftentimes comes with the companies actually having the data on you, like the life events that we just in a financial services. Right or wrong, there are leading companies that, and I'm not going to name the brand per se, but there is an electric, car company out there that when they sell you the car and you're proud driver, you drive out from that dealership, they track every single one of your locations. They actually will, and they monitor the car, they monitor, clearly the performance and this and that, but you don't have the lever to say, pass, I would like to opt out. I don't want to know where I'm at. Right? And it's a global company. And so there are companies that, will allow you to opt out of some of those, sort of data collection events, if you will, and some that don't. Another sort of interesting trend that we have seen out there is, let's say you go and get your blood test done, checking for cholesterol once a year, laying off those steaks, maybe not. And, these companies, they actually go in and they take the data and they sell them for research. They do anonymize it, and then they sell them for research. Shouldn't you want to be part of the process saying, sure, use my data, but I want that 0.00 penny of a profit on that record, kind of like the whole Spotify model, right? If you're an artist, you know what I'm saying? Nobody gets rich on Spotify, especially if you're a normal artist, but at least you get paid for some of the work that you have done, or your data is being used. So the company that I have kind of shared here on a page is called Humanico, and they're really interested in tackling sort of that human right on a global level. Will they succeed? That's really time to tell, but it's interesting that there truly are companies that are pointing out some of the areas where it's your data and you should be able to have control over. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of these global data privacy laws.
Svatka, are you advancing your slides? I don't know if anybody else is seeing. I just see the opening slide.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them advance either.
Okay.
Right.
I just didn't think you were.
Start over.
Very good opening slide.
Yeah.
Right.
Opening slide. Okay. So let's see here. Can you see this page?
Yeah.
Global data privacy laws.
All right. Sounds good. So I'm gonna show you my second one, which only had, the main page, which is really the trending is the trust, the trust that companies are doing the right thing. That's really, the main premise over here. But so now that you at least see the acronyms, I find the acronyms super confusing. So I write them out so that people can actually start picking up some of those trends and words and whatnot. And so let's talk a little bit about GDPR. Everybody knows it's part of EMEA. We're in US. Why should I care, right? sometimes global companies that you may or may not work for will have data that, for consumers from these areas. All of a sudden, you kind of have to care. And so that's one of the areas that, will help you understand why and, why some of these laws came in effect. So let's just go ahead and talk about sort of what the GDPR is. There is, I believe, like 99 articles that truly clearly define what type of data protection there are. One of them is right to be forgotten. I think that's really the easiest one to understand. So let's say Carla says, don't want to do business with you, dear company. I want you to just go ahead and clear out my name from all of your databases, right? And so here comes the question for maybe Kevin was talking about, hey, want to print this page with Carla's information, right? What do you do with that? And how do you, do companies choose to truly stay digital or create a second copy of the data, or maybe like a file profile here? So GDPR came in effect May 2018. CCPA, that's closer to home, California, January 2020. Brazil started looking into it in summer. There are more countries to follow. I talked to a fellow technologist out of Canada. He said, yes, we have the rules. No, we don't know how to actually enforce them yet. So that's another thing, that this is right? You guys are not too late to the game. This is truly going to be an evolution across the globe. And it's time for us to take a moment and think about it, as you create new fields in Salesforce, as you create new workflows, or you choose to replicate data or not. What are sort of the other implications? So that's really, where the talk comes in today, is trying to bring some of the details in the forefront, because every one of us makes some of these data decisions each and every day. So I'm going to like to maybe show you one of the companies or one of those sort of laws that are actually enforcing it. And I thought that this was really interesting. Yes, they are, going after Facebook and the Googles and, the large E&U companies, and they're actually looking at enforcing some of those laws. I think the first one had something to do with marketing, and they didn't sort of take the references in account. So that's where that first one came in. What was interesting to see that there is kind of an average cost for failing to comply with some of the data privacy laws, ranked around $14.8 million, which is quite enormous amount. So again, this is not to scare any one of you, but this is, just basically, making sure that people understand that there will be implications coming forward. Maybe not for us, because this is clearly in EMEA today, and we are still in a different world. But sooner or later, some of these might come up. This slide came from Salesforce, from Rachel Bird. I thought it was really interesting to look at Salesforce security. We are so lucky to be on Salesforce platform. Not, imagine the other sort of cloud platforms where you have to manage the servers. You have to do the data backups, so many other things, right? So anytime I talk about Salesforce, I'm always feeling really grateful to say, all that stuff on the bottom in the purple, maybe the last, the bottom and the second one, I really don't have to worry about it. I remember going to servers and hitting the restart button, and you're in this server room and the wind is blowing back and forth and your hair is moving all over the place. Yeah, those kind of locations, we don't have to do that, right? So we are super lucky. Some of the additional sort of settings or layers, like IP restrictions, our admin teams can do it, right? So even like from the nonprofit groups, Jackie and Joseph, right? You guys know you can manage your application with like 15 some declarative ways, org by defaults, roles, permissions, right? All that is still on a record, and by field you can manage the security, which is awesome. What I think is with this sort of overlay of global privacy laws will, bring is additional sort of view on, hey, how do we actually take care of certain events? Like I'm halfway through, let's say, a deployment, and I'm looking at running maybe simulations through UAT. The data masking tool is super awesome to basically go and anonymize all the data sets in UAT. You don't have to put Carla's real phone number or real bank account in the UAT for anybody to check out, right? Because clearly we drop our guard in UAT system. We need to be able to protect the data on every single stage of either the lifecycle deployment or even else. Okay. So this slide that I thought was really interesting to look at is there are things that are in our control and there are things that are outside of our control. It is totally outside of our control to manage cybersecurity. That's again, so Salesforce does for us, right? But for the developers in the room, we do have levers like, escaping the special characters for cycle injections and whatnot. We know we have those. We can definitely do those. How do you change a perception, a consumer perception, in saying, hey, there is 41% of consumers don't really believe that companies care, right? So that comes from business processes. And how do you approach the market and how transparent you are saying, we care about your data, we care about you as a consumer, and this is what we are doing to protect your data. I think that's something that can be changed because it is perception coming from the market and outside. In terms of saying that your personal team members are perhaps using the data for other purposes. Again, that's something that the admins can do, right? You guys there is something called Security Center that Salesforce is releasing. It is an add-on product. You have to pay for it. I don't know if anybody in the group has used it yet, but that's another lever that you can use, absolutely, right? Don't know if you guys noticed at Dreamforce, there was this mention of a hyperforce, and it's super ominous. It's kind of, here's hyperforce, like, what does this thing do? It's a special keyword. But really, when you think about it, it's geared towards the countries that are saying, my data has to reside within the walls of this country. All of a sudden throws a wrench in for these architects that are trying to figure out how to have an enterprise landscape work in a proper way, saying, that you're going to go and actually take the whole Salesforce instance, put it on an AWS within, like, let's say, the wall of Germany, right? And every data that you have for your customer that lives in Germany has to stay within the walls of the country. It's going to be super complex problem to solve. But it's not that we can't, it's just different. What I thought was really interesting is putting that whole Swiss cheese effect here. So as you guys are seeing, right, you layer. So we are trying to think about how do you protect the data, the access to data from the code, from the front end, from, even, following customer wishes on the top of that, right? So there is something called that came in spring 18, and I'm not going to speculate, but I think it was kind of precursor or sort of the core fundamental layer to GDPR, because it was right around the timing that everybody was talking about GDPR. What it gives you guys is a way to say, this is a customer who wants to opt out of X, Y, or Z. And the customer could be a lead, the customer could be a contact, the customer could be a person account, right? So the who ID concept, wherever that customer is, wherever within the life cycle of a customer journey they are at, you can take this individual object and connect them to whatever object they are in. Salesforce added classification on every single attribute, which I think is really phenomenal, saying, hey, dear admins, I've created just a field. Is this field something that should be protected, right? Is this field part of a combinations of PII, or is this part of HIPAA, or whatever it is? Today we can run a report, and as long as you actually go ahead and rank every one of your fields, if you have more than 800 in an object, it's going to be a lot of work, but you can rank your fields based on privacy. So that's helping some of the audits that maybe your team's doing. Third-party apps for maybe encryptions, enterprise landscape we talk about a little bit. It's all of the systems that are connected to your Salesforce, instance that may or may not replicate the data to Salesforce or from Salesforce that you will need to be aware of in the event that you want to, that you need to actually comply with some of these requests from your customers. So I'll give you an example. You run a campaign and the customer wants to unsubscribe from a campaign. You're running it out of Marketing Cloud from ExactTarget. So then you're linking two systems, right? You unsubscribe from there. You want to trickle it down to that individual object and mark it there as well. So there is a simple connection. But imagine that you have 50 downstream systems. Yes, there are companies with a lot of downstream systems, and they happen to replicate a lot of information. It becomes a lot harder job to say that, Carla decided to opt out and wants to get, be wiped out from the system. Will we go ahead and actually anonymize the record, or will we go and truly remove the record from a system? So those are some of the questions that, we might be looking into, and or we might be presented by. Here is at least one screenshot of Salesforce. I couldn't, not to show you guys that this is what the individual object actually looks like. There's a little sort of lever that you have to enable first before that shows up. And wanted to see if any of you actually would like to help me solution for that right to be forgotten rule. What would you do if, let's say you're in your Health Cloud instance or your financial services instance, and someone says, I need to create a process for a customer who wants to be forgotten? What would that step be? Would you go super technical with a bunch of code, or would you make it very simple with using, some of the standard functionality that you have? So I'm looking for some takers.
Svatka, could there be a mechanism? There's a metadata tag around fields where you could state if it's extra security is around that, so that you'd be able to manipulate large amounts of data that have that tag quickly?
That would be on a record. You mean on an attribute itself, or on a record?
Well, I guess I was thinking more generically, but I was just kind of, thinking about the process of how you could do that systematically.
It could be a flag on a record. Yeah, you could basically say, listen, this is a customer who has this request, right? Remember, there's going to be so many privacy laws, right? Are we going to create one for every single one? There probably should be a reason why. Maybe it's a drop down, right? But that's a good one. I like that, Kevin. Anyone else? Come on, David. I know you're thinking about some really good solutions. I'll give you this. I was talking to my in the past too, and I kind of challenged them, and I said, okay, we had this one FinServ client. They're not using financial services just yet, and they went super simply with cases. Just log a case, right, and have someone in the back end actually manage it. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complex. You have to have clearly the requests coming from a customer queued up and manage the actual resolution of it. And then you could assign to many different things, and you could have checklists. You could say, okay, be checked it off on this system, that system, that system, and now we're in compliance, right? That should.
So if I wanted to be de-identified in your system, so you've got my name in there, I'm a contact. What happens to my contact record? Let's say, and I've got a variety of opportunities out there. I may have some cases that from customer service. What does that look like in the system? And
so that's a representation. So GDPR rights to be forgotten, something that is also really hard to interpret. When I worked with this one UK customer, their legal team would say, as long as we mark it anonymous, it's fine. So we just renamed John Smith to anonymous, and we are good, right? Well, guess what happens in the history?
Yeah.
It says just changed from John Smith to anonymous, right? So that's not working. Sometimes you have documents like PDFs, right? So like Kevin was saying, hey, maybe I want to have a sheet and give it to my execs as they're walking in a room. Would you actually save it as PDF, attach it, and then they can just launch it from there, like a quick cheat sheet, right? That's another question, right? How do you actually go about managing this customer request? you can't delete your transactions because then your ledger wouldn't be proper. If let's say if you're in a retail, so I think it's the interpretation, and it's also following some of the best practices that are yet to come. To be quite honest.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen the object that you referred to out there for data privacy, and then all of the new options that we have when we create a field to check different things. But I've struggled myself with trying to figure out, okay, so what? What are they doing other than it's adding information to? They don't do anything, from what I've seen, and so I've struggled with that. It's like we've kind of recognized the fact that we need to do something, and so we'll create these screens and collect information, but then we don't really do anything to hide it. Is that a kind of a fair assessment of what you're seeing, or what?
And I think that's why I'm calling it a building block, because I think that as more of these laws come in effect, and like GDPR has 99 different types, right, or articles, they call those. It's very difficult to build for future when we are not quite sure. Like one of my slides, I think it said Nevada, New York, Washington, Texas, where the other 4 states that are looking at what California privacy law has. So, and they could be, vastly different. And so I think that we don't have enough information to know what the business process should look like. But really what this is giving us a good start is look at our landscape, figuring out where are we looking at the data? Are we doing the right integration? Because maybe we don't have to replicate. Maybe we can just speak in a system and show it on a screen through like Lightning instead of just replicating data, and then we have to protect the data.
That makes sense. So you're in essence just limiting your exposure to some extent with that.
That's right. I had a college professor, and he asked the team once a question that kind of got you thinking differently. And he said, if you don't want someone to take your credit card, what do you do when you do business with 10 retailers, online retailers? Well, the answer that he gave us was just don't save it. Use it for that one transaction. Remember that checkbox that says keep me for like next time? Don't do it. Then they don't have to be liable for holding their, your credit card information for you. Me personally, I just noticed that I canceled a couple of credit cards last year, and I forgot to deactivate my connection to my autopay from my bank. That's something that they don't need to have anymore, right? So just think about where your data is at. You're playing equal role, in owning your own data, and seeing that there are countries and organizations that are trying to fight to protect your data, but giving you choices, and it's definitely a step in a different direction. Yeah.
Have you used, or has anybody used is it called anonymize when you're creating your sandboxes to de-identify your people? I've not used it yet. I'm curious if anybody has.
I haven't used it yet either. Our data comes from other systems, so we obfuscate our data elsewhere before it comes into Salesforce sandboxes. So that's what we do. But.
Cool.
I have a question. If you're taking questions, so this is. Wow, what a big topic, and there's so much to follow, and it's new and it's evolving. Is there a good place to go to monitor this and to stay apprised of what's going on? What would you recommend?
So I have added actually some of my references.
Oh.
Anytime I borrow from other places, like Rachel's slide for all of the security, or the individual object, there was that overview from spring 18. There are websites, even just to go to the GDPR in European Union website, just see what they're doing, right? Maybe read through some of those articles. Some of them are, in attorney speak. You're like, what? Come again? But that's totally fine. Like eventually we're going to figure out how to interpret those that actually matter for us. right? This should not in any way stop the way that, how we run business. But it does ask that question, do you need this data in Salesforce today? And if you need it, do you need to see it? Or is there a process that needs it in order to evaluate action? And that will help you to decide whether the data belongs to Salesforce or not, and is there another way to get it there? And I think those are some of the questions that we can be thinking about as we are developing solutions. And like Joseph, in nonprofit, nonprofit typically has so many vendors, right, to take the function of marketing and to take the function of log boxes and paychecks or payrolls or getting the donations, this and that. So just even thinking about how many times have I replicated data and sent it downstream, and can I actually show if and when, and I don't think that's going to happen to nonprofit, but if and when someone comes knocking on the door and says, this person has asked for you to stop sending them X. How have you acted, right? Where is that trail? So I think those are some of the questions that we need to be thinking about. Just stay apprised. Probably looking at the California privacy law. I'm not too close or familiar with that either. But yeah, check out those sites and see how it's evolving.
So it sounds like to me the takeaway is to kind of wrap our heads around the data that we have in our system. Yep. And do we really need some of the identifiable pieces to that information? And if we don't load it, or don't store it, maybe is the right. Would that be a?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Additionally, when you think about communities, communities will allow the customer to update data about themselves. And so, right or wrong, I had a customer who basically said, I'm going to let my consumers come and communicate through communities to tell me what they want to change, but I'm not going to let them change it. I'm going to queue it up and then review it, right? So the consumers are basically saying, I know what my name is. If I get married, my last name is different. Let me change it, right? Those are some of the basic things. Not everything is as controversial as, right to be forgotten, but even saying, change my name. And don't make me send you 15 million pieces of documents. You don't need my driver's license to say I got married if I buy a pair of shoes from you. So I think those are some of the additional layers that that we'll be seeing that will come out, and that makes a little more common sense. And maybe communities will be the right way to actually manage that for customers.
Very good. Any other questions for Svatka?
Ideas for restaurants to visit.
If you're back in Iowa, there's another place similar to Open Grill called Rube's. It's just as good. Not familiar with it, but thank you for talking about this today. It was really interesting.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yeah,
thank you.
Awesome. Very good. Any other questions? If not, Svatka, thank you so much. Nice to see you again. It's always good to connect.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, awesome. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I think that leaves you guys with me at this point. So my apologies. You're stuck with me. Let me share my screen on Terry's Tidbits for today. And I need to find the right thing to share. I think it's this guy. All right. Has that come up?
Yep.
All right. Very good. Well, you might be familiar with this particular site. So if you are ever curious what your internet speed is, you would go to a site like this, and you might click into here to SpeedStat and click go. And what it will do is it will go out and ping a server and bring back how quick your internet speed is, hopefully. And so you get kind of a gauge, and it's really kind of interesting to do that. Sometimes when you're doing a presentation or something, you want to make sure you've got enough bandwidth to be able to share information. And so you run a little test like this. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we had the same type of capability inside of Salesforce? And the answer to that is we actually do. And so in your Salesforce org, you can come up to your URL. Hopefully you're able to see this large enough and type in, kind of erase everything after the .com except for that little slash and type in speed test.jsp. Don't forget the JSP. And when you run that, it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And this is also a really nice way to figure out what server are you running on. So you can see very quickly which server you're on. You can also see what release you're currently using within your org. Now, there's this little test speed button. And if I click on that test speed, it's going to run a variety of performance indicators here for me. So I can see how fast is my connection with this server and how is it responding to me. So you can see that stuff start to come as it finishes up its testing here. So we'll let that go. I'm going to be kind of curious to see how those of you I see that are on video are already doing this to see how fast your server is. So I'm going to be curious if what kind of a difference you get from my results. But let's see, this is getting pretty close to done. So that comes back with our Octane score. That's just simply tells us how fast that server is. The higher that number, the better, the quicker the server is that we are operating on. We have 16, basically it's like a CPU with inside the computer. So there's 16 cores that indicate what kind of hardware we're using. We've got our frame rate there. Latency is the one that's really kind of interesting. That's how fast the server is responding to your request. So as you hit the save button, how quickly is Salesforce going to come back and respond with information to you? I see, Boone, your production site's at 21K. Okay. Download speed is there, and then your upload speed is there as well. You do have some nice little links. I did find that the this one here no longer is accurate. It shouldn't take us to a status. It's actually called instances, but that will take you directly to your server as well, so that you can kind of see what's happening when there is an issue on your server side. So. Fun little thing. If you weren't aware of that little trick, that's your tidbit for today.
Hey, Terry, one thing that, and this may be because we haven't, we're still anonymous and we haven't enabled my domain in our org yet. It does not let you through yet on that.
It does not. So my domain's required.
Apparently.
Interesting. Anybody else run it?
Yeah, I ran ours. It was 24,000.
24. Okay. Very good. Cool.
Still running. I'll let you know.
Still running. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I like it. I like not only knowing what the performance is coming down, but it is nice to be able to, as a way to quickly find out what server you're on instead of having to go to the company information page or something, and then having a link that gets you straight over to the trust site. That's pretty sweet to have that quickly available. So if you weren't aware of that little trick, there you go.
Hey, Terry, your home internet is so fast.
Yeah, I'm super jealous.
Yeah, I've got 2 lines actually coming in, so it fails over if there's a problem. So it makes it when you work from home all the time, you kind of need. If I'm not working, I'm not making money, so it's kind of important for me to be up. So, yeah, very good.
Hey, Terry, I'm not sure what any of these mean. Are there ranges that are acceptable, or things that we should keep in mind?
No, nothing that they have officially produced. Octane score is kind of an industry standard for measuring a CPU or a computer's performance. That higher the number for that, there is a website, I forget I think it's called CPU Performance or something along that line, that actually takes and tells you what your Octane score is for a given computer. So if you ever want to know if you're buying a computer and you see that this is a Intel i7 some number. You can actually go to that site, and it will show you where that processor performs compared to others. I think it's called CPU performance or something. If you Google that, that might. Oh, maybe it's benchmark. Yeah, benchmark, CPU benchmark. I can share that again.
Brian put a link in the chat, and it does say fastest experience recommendations, minimum requirements.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, Octane score of 20,000 or greater is minimum. So
nice.
That's got some benchmarks in it, I think.
Awesome.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, that talks about the URLs right there as well. Great link. Thanks, Brian. Awesome.